Hello and welcome to the United Community Channel. Welcome back to Red Hot Takes. Another day, another story about Manchester United, and it's been a busy week, both on and off the field. And as always, we've got the one and only Tom Aldino with us. Good to see you, Adam. As always, thanks for joining us. But we've got plenty to get into, guys. We're going to talk, of course. Me and Adam haven't spoken since the Lyon game last week, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Newcastle game. We're going to talk, as you can see by the thumbnail, Thierry Henry has had some pretty shitty analysis towards Leny Yoro. We're going to talk about that. There's a really damning stat in relation to Bruno Fernandes and how many points he has contributed to Manchester United's league campaign this season. And I'm going to give you a hint. It ain't good. Without Bruno Fernandes, we would be in serious trouble. So we'll talk about that as well. And of course, we'll preview the game coming up on Thursday night, guys. As always, smash a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you're watching us live on YouTube, do jump into the comment section. Let us know your thoughts. And if you're listening back on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, do give us a 5-star review. But Adam, let's jump straight into it, man. Obviously, look, we haven't spoken since this time last week, and United have had a couple of games since then. We'll get into the Newcastle game in a minute because that was obviously an absolute shit show. But talk to me a little bit about Lyon first. Obviously, last week, 2-2. What did you make in the game overall? And of course, we'll get into individuals, you know, who we're going to talk about in a minute. But what did you make of the game overall?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's so much that happened in that game. It was actually mad. My thoughts on the game, though, I actually thought we did well for certain parts. You know, I thought we actually played well in certain parts of the game. Like, I was actually very optimistic going into the game. You know, I actually thought we were... you know, I thought defensively we were very compact. I thought we were actually playing really well. But we can see... Look, if I'm going into individuals already in terms of Onana, you know, he is at fault for both goals. But I would actually also blame the defensive line for the first goal because they were very static, you know, and no one really moved, you know, to try even clear the ball away or to try and get to the ball. Very, very static. And that obviously then caused Onana to have a howler, you know, but he is majorly, you know, to blame as well. And that was an absolute horror mistake from Onana. But then we got back into the game straight away from a set piece of our own from Leny Yoro. It was a great bit of reaction.
From moved really well, didn't he? Reacted really well.
Yeah, really, really good from Leny Yoro. And he had a great game, that game as well. You know, I thought the whole defence really was really good. You know, it was just, again, in front of goal, trying to create chances and stuff like that. And it was Højlund again. He wasn't doing anything at all. Garnacho, very, very poor. But then when a certain Joshua Zirkzee came onto the pitch, we saw what he did. He scored. And it was actually a great goal. You know, and Kobe Manu made a great impact with, obviously, headering the ball down for Bruno. And Bruno, by the way, again, was absolutely immense. Unreal. But then, typical Man United to go and concede in the final minutes of the game. Andre Onana, again, it was just a shocking night for him in general. It just was. You know, look, I went in hard on Onana that night, you know, just giving out so much about him. But I'm not going to give out tonight about him. It was just an absolute howler of a game for him. And hopefully in the second leg, look, 2-2, if you're asking me would I take a draw going into the second leg, I absolutely would have, because it's not the worst result going back to Old Trafford. But, you know, after a certain game that happened on Sunday, I don't know if I'm that optimistic going into the second leg. But again, it's different competitions. We might have a better team out. But again, Joshua Zirkzee's injured as well. And it's not really working in our favour at all. But again, 2-2 isn't the worst result to take back to Old Trafford. So, I'll take it. But Onana, man.
Really disappointing.
Could have went to the second leg 2-0 up, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but again, look, I think you're spot on in what you're saying. You know, I think the majority of Manchester United fans going into the game, if you had offered them a 2-2 draw away from home, we probably would have taken it, absolutely. And again, it's individual errors, you know. And I'm seeing an awful lot of nonsense online about, you know, certain parts of the fan base now giving out about Ruben Amorim and he has to take blame and, you know, he's not the man for the job. And even some idiots talking about, you know, Amorim out and this nonsense, you know. And I think an awful lot of the disappointing results this season have been down to individual errors, you know, and I think Ruben Amorim is actually setting us up in ways to go on and win games. And, you know, we're going and we're doing, like, obviously against Lyon, you know, give ourselves a good opportunity to go on and win games, but it's individual errors that are letting us down more than anything. And how frustrated do you think Ruben Amorim is? You know, obviously, I think this is probably one of the main reasons why he didn't want to take the job mid-season and wanted to hold out until maybe the summer transfer window and get players of his own in.
Yeah, it must be so frustrating for him, because this is not the way it was supposed to be. You know, like, I'm looking at the stats as well of him in the Premier League. I know I'm changing kind of competition here, but if you look at what stats are in the Premier League, he's lost 10 games, I think, in 21 Premier League games. Like, you know, you can give him some blame in terms of maybe substitutions that weren't right, but that's about it. I'm not going in on another manager. I'm just not doing it, because these players are simply not good enough. They're not buying into his style. Like, okay, maybe defensively in the last couple of games, besides the Newcastle game, we were actually doing really well. You know, we just had of a game, you know, because, you know, we rotated as well. We had Lindelof there, and it wasn't really ideal. But the reality is, these players long term are just not going to buy into the way he wants to play, you know, and he needs,
or are not good enough to actually do it.
Yeah, are not good enough to do it, you know, and there's just so many problems that lies ahead for him, you know, and it must be frustrating him. Be frustrating for him. But, you know, the reality is, I'm hoping that Ineos can give him what he needs in the summer, you know, and give the tools that he needs to actually succeed, because he's not going to succeed. No, he could win the Europa League, and it would be an absolute, for me now, it would be an absolute miracle because of the way we're playing. But if we win the Europa League, it's a great thing. But for me, I'm looking long term in the way we want to play, the way we actually want to play under this manager, and what he's actually going to get in terms of the players in the summer, you know, and how he's going to get backed, you know. So, yeah, but right now it must be so frustrating for him, because I don't think he wanted maybe to come in mid-season. You know, maybe he did want to hold out for the, you know, the summer and stuff, but it's just so
Well, it was that was kind of it, wasn't it? Like, United pretty much gave him an ultimatum. You either take it now or we're moving on to somebody else. And, you know, I suppose it goes to show maybe how much he did want to come to United, the fact that he was willing to leave a very, you know, successful sporting team mid-season.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually shocked by that because of how well they were doing. You know, I actually didn't think we'd get Ruben Amorim mid-season, but when Man United come knocking, and, you know, one of the biggest clubs in the world come knocking, you know, it kind of is hard for a manager like Ruben Amorim to turn that down. But I think a lot of us fans, even including myself, expected maybe a little bit of a manager bounce, you know, but it hasn't materialized that way at all. It's just been shocker after shocker after shocker. And, you know, if we do manage to finish 13th, 14th this season, which is a massive possibility right now, by the way, you know, even lads, we're 3 points off 17th.
Yeah, you know, but like we're not going to move. I don't think we're going to move too much up or down. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think, like, you make a good point there when you talk about, you know, a new manager bounce. I think a lot of the new manager bounces are down to the fact that managers are coming in and they're maybe altering their way of playing to suit the squad that they inherit. You know what I mean? Like David Moyes, for example, is going into Everton and he's had a massive turnaround, but he knows maybe the benefits of and the attributes of the players that are in that squad. So he tailors his game to it, if it's high energy or full press or sit deep or whatever the case. Where Ruben Amorim is going, no, we need a full reset here. And I'm coming in to give you that reset. And we're starting right now. And it's going to take time. You know what I mean? But anyway, look, Adam, let's move it on. And I don't even want to talk about Newcastle, but we have to. Let's talk about Newcastle. Look, I obviously, you gave your thoughts on your own channel. And again, guys, Adam's channel is linked down below, so make sure you go and follow him. I give my thoughts as well. And game of two halves. I thought in first half, I thought we were actually quite good. You know, I thought we went in level quite deservedly, to be honest with you. But second half, my God, things just, I think it was one of the worst performances we've seen under Amorim. What did you make of it? I'm
going to slightly disagree with you about the first half. I don't think we were that good at all. I thought we had moments of individual quality from the likes of Xerxes and Bruno, and obviously Dalot made a few bursts forward and obviously assisted Garnacho's goal, and that was a nice finish. I'm not going to deny that, but that was about it. You know, the first half defensively we were very poor. Obviously up against a great Newcastle side that just won a cup on a high at the moment, but I predicted that we were going to get hammered before the game. Like I did. I actually predicted a 4-0 loss, but it just, the second half, it was just individual error after individual error. Mazwari's slip. I thought Dallo got cooked for the second goal.
Terrible.
It was awful defending, and the fourth goal, I mean, by in there. Like, come on, seriously. Like, you must know, like, goalkeepers must know, if you're under pressure that much, and the way they kept pressing Newcastle, United just couldn't deal with it.
Villa have just equalised with a worldie from John McGinn. Sorry, go on. It's 5-3 now, so game on with 35 minutes to go. Sorry.
Again, no, surely. No.
I know we can't do this again. 2 weeks in a row, we can't. No. Go on.
But, yeah, by in there, like, you must know as a goalkeeper, when you're under that much pressure, you surely kick it long. Like, surely you kick it long. You don't try and dink it into the middle of the park where there's going to be swarms of Newcastle players pressing the ball. I think it was just a lot of stupid errors that led to Newcastle hammering us at the end, And look, they fully deserve to beat us, And
yeah, they're a better side anyway. You know what I mean?
But like, what I noticed about that game is everything that Manchester United should actually be looking towards in terms of for the short term at the moment. Like, the long term is to be up there with Liverpool and challenging and stuff like that, and Arsenal and stuff like that. But for me, Newcastle, if you look at that club right now, they're challenging for the Champions League places. They have a manager that the players are buying into and they're playing for him. They're playing for the fans. The fans have a great connection with the players. They're winning the Carabao Cup. They're back challenging for trophies. It's a great football club right now, that is on a high, and they're doing everything right to get to the top, and it's not going to be, long-term stuff. In the long term, Newcastle might be challenging for titles and stuff like that. But that's what Manchester United need to work towards, getting that connection back with the fans, having players that are going to buy into the style that Ruben Amorim wants to play, and having an ownership, by the way, that will back that manager, and stuff like that. Because it is an absolute farce that we're getting hammered by the likes of Newcastle, Bournemouth, Brighton, all these guys. And at home as well. We're getting battered by these teams at home. It was the first time that I think Newcastle did a double over us since 1931. That's absolutely fucking disgraceful. So it shows you how much of a bad moment we're in. But if I'm looking at Newcastle, I'm like, Man United should be looking towards what Newcastle are doing right now, in my opinion, and the likes of Aston Villa and stuff like that for the short term. And then in the long term, when you do what Newcastle are doing, then you go for the big one.
And do you think there's a sense of, and I completely agree with you, by the way, it's a game model, it's buying, and it all comes down to recruitment. Newcastle could be the best run team in the world, but if you haven't got good recruitment, it's not worth fucking shit to you. But, do you think there's a situation there where, right, okay, Newcastle, they hadn't won a trophy for however long it was, 50 years or whatever the case may be, that there's probably a little bit more, I won't say pressure, but more expectation for Man United to get back quicker than maybe Newcastle would have on them? Is that maybe fair to say?
Yeah, no, I completely understand that, because Manchester United are a massive football club and a massive institution. But the reality is, if you look at where Manchester United are at,
we need to be patient.
We need to be patient. And look, I haven't been patient in the past. I've always thought quick fix, because we're Man United. But I've just come to my senses that Manchester United are not that club anymore. Right at this moment in time, they are not that football club right now. Yes, we're the big Manchester United, but on the pitch, we're not showing that. So for me, I've gone for a different thought process. Okay, we need to be patient now with this manager, who's a young manager, but who's a very, very good coach.
Yeah.
We need to back him with the players he needs to actually succeed, and that could take 4 or 5 years. And it probably will take that amount of time. But we need to actually be patient as fans for once. Because I'm not having this shit now of, next season, if we're not doing great, which there's a possibility we might not do great again next season, but we might do a lot better than what we're doing right now, So the reality,
and I think D makes a very good point, and in the comments here, he says, if he does that, then how long does it go before these massive idiots shut down on him again when they don't get their own way? And I think that's very important. We need to be patient, and we need to maybe understand that it is a 2 or a 3 year, plan or process. And I think we'd all be happy maybe if United were challenging for top 4 next year. You know what I mean? And even over the next couple of years, you know, if you said, right, let's solidify top 4 for 2 seasons, and then maybe in 3 seasons' time, you can look at potentially trying to challenge. Maybe doesn't mean going and winning a Premier League title in 3 years' time, but you're seeing the steps. You know what I mean? Slowly but surely going forward. You know, and I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, and like you need to have the right structure, culture, and standards behind them. That I've scored again.
No, so they have, right? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. They scored a couple of minutes. They scored like 90 seconds ago. It's 3-2 to Villa now on the night. So it's 5-4 on aggregate to PSG. But Donnarumma just pulled one out the top corner to stop it being level on aggregate.
Oh.
You need to sit in front of your telly every night we do this because you're missing out on some good games.
That downstairs. Yeah, but like what I'm saying was like you need to have the right structure, the right culture, the right standards, you know.
Yeah, and look as well, I think like to kind of bring it back to the Newcastle game a little bit. You look at the players that we mentioned there that made the mistakes for the goals. We actually left out Lindelof. He made a mistake for 2 of the goals. You know, I thought was very poor. The players that are making these mistakes and putting us in the situations that we're in, we already know are not good enough for Manchester United. You know, and they're the players that you're more than likely going to try and move on, you know, in the summer. We know Lindelof's contract is up. He's going to move on. Binder is only the backup option. You're talking about the low. We all know, and we all kind of want a new right wing back coming in. So you'd expect him to at least be a backup, even if it's going to be Ahmad, it's going to be the right wing back. But there was a couple of positives to take out of the game, Adam. And I think the first one is Harry Amas's debut. And for 55 minutes that he was on the pitch, he didn't do an awful lot wrong.
Yeah, no, he reminded me a lot of Luke Shaw. Like this bit and the way he was carrying the ball forward, the way he was passing the ball.
Don't put that fucking jinx on him, will you? Jesus Christ.
I don't want to do it to another player. But no, I actually thought he did really well. You know, for a 17-year-old to make his debut. And like a lot of people going in on him, and I saw it on Twitter, like a lot of people going in on him. I'm like, lads, oh my God, he's 17. Like, it's his first start in the Premier League away to Newcastle at St. James's Park. Give him time, lads, for fuck's sake. He's only started, like. But I thought he was clearing the ball very well. You know, he was winning a few fouls as well. You know, it's definitely one for the future. And, you know,
there's going to be a lot of competition for that left wing back role next year because obviously Dorgu is there. You'd probably expect Luke Shaw to move on, but you're talking Dorgu, Amas, and then of course Diego Leon is coming in on the 1st of July from South America as well. Now he's probably going to be a little bit raw. You wouldn't expect him to be too close to the first team, but I mean, I always said competition is good to have.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And we need competition next season. You know, we need players fighting for their places, you know, and we need multiple players in different positions, you know, to challenge. So, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see what we do in the summer in terms of buying players for each positions, you know, because we need to have good backups as well as good starters. You know, we need to.
Absolutely.
Successful, like, you know, so we'll see what happens in the summer.
Yeah, and the other positive, I suppose, and this is only maybe a small individual positive, would be Garnacho's goal, and you know, obviously for the overall result of the game, it didn't matter a jot, but maybe a little bit of positivity for him. He was also substituted quite early in the game. I think it's probably nailed on then that he's going to start against Lyon on Thursday.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I think Garnacho. Look, I thought Garnacho was actually okay, but again, he was still very weak. He was still losing the ball quite a few times, you know. But again, on the counter, he actually wasn't that bad. He was actually creating a few chances. But I would actually throw in another positive there as well. Joshua Zirkzee. I thought Joshua was fantastic for the 60 or 55, 60 minutes that he was on the pitch. You know, the link-up play he had with Bruno at one stage for a chance was unbelievable. If that goal came off, probably would have been one of our goals of the season. It was fantastic. You know, and his link-up play and everything just was fantastic. Everything, you know, so much better than Highland. But then when he got injured, I was like, oh, we're down to 2 attackers. Our two attackers are not performing well at the moment. So it's not looking great in terms of up front and creating chances, but hopefully they can pull some out of the bag on Thursday, those two lads.
Yeah, and I think a report about Zirkzee came out today from the BBC. Sammy Mockbell from the BBC said Joshua Zirkzee is set to miss several weeks with a hamstring injury and could potentially be ruled out for the rest of the season. And I mentioned it on the watch along as well. Sometimes you can pull your hamstring and you can actually walk off and you're fine, and it's not too bad. You might be out for a couple of weeks, but when you need help getting off the pitch, I just said straight away. And and you hear Ruben Amorim saying after it in his press conference, I think it's over. It's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not good. Now we're down to 2 attackers, and again, it's 2 guys that have been underperforming this season quite a lot. So, it is what it is. But as I said, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful from now on. I'm not confident anymore whatsoever. I'm just hoping and praying that Garnacho can actually, be consistent now from now towards the end of the season, and actually, from his goal against Newcastle can hopefully do something then on hopefully can give him a bit of confidence going into Thursday, and hopefully Highland can do something. Again, Jack, it's only genuine, it's actually only hope at this stage. It really
That's
is.
it, man. Let me get through some of the comments here. Plenty of comments coming in. Keep them coming, guys. Jida says, Highland and Garnacho Thursday. Bloody hell. They're spot on. The team is on the line. If they don't win, I promise you, but I'm still backing us a 3-0 win. Warren says, rumour has it Yoro was looking across at the linesman to make sure he was onside when they connected. When he connected with the header versus Lyon. We'll talk about Thierry Henry now in a few minutes. Fucking French boy. D says Onana can redeem himself though. If he absolute drops that French so-and-so Henry, I may just forgive him. Yeah. And look, again, we'll get on to the Lyon preview in a few minutes, but I have a sleeky suspicion that Onana will be back in. Would have taken anything but a loss, but it was the way we threw it away. It's been disappointingly recurring theme across the season. D says, lads, I think it's evident now Garnacho is not going to be at United under Amorim. What do you make of that, Adam? Do you think the system is just not going to suit him going forward? I mean, again, the stat was thrown out there. He's got more goals before 21 at United than Ronaldo had, So I think it just proves that he is by no means the finished article. Does he deserve time, or should we be going, right, well, if we can get 50 million in for him now, let's move him on?
See, the problem I have with this, whole let's give him time. And I understand, sometimes players don't hit their peak, till a certain age, and that's absolutely fine. And we're seeing what the likes of Lamine Yamal is doing at his age. We're seeing what Desiree Doué is doing at 19 years old. But then you're seeing what Garnacho's doing at 19 years old. Look, I think in terms of, output and what he's actually, providing for Man United is actually good, at times. Like you saw last season, he was actually one of our most important players in terms of output and scoring goals and assisting. This season, at the start, it was good, but it's just been horrible probably since October-ish.
Since Ruben Amorim came in and this system changed.
Yeah, it hasn't suited him. He's an out-and-out winger, that likes to play in maybe like a 4-3-3 kind of, type formation, where he has the freedom out wide. He's not drifting inside all the time, and that's what 3-4-3 is. You can drift out wide in a 3-4-3, but it's mainly narrow number 10s, and when I see the likes of Cunha and players like that at Wolves, they're the type of players that I would like to see in those 10 roles. I don't want to see out-and-out wingers. I don't want to see Garnacho. Now, which I don't think he's going to do, by the way. But if Ruben Amorim was to switch up his formation and go to a 3 up front in terms of wingers, out-and-out wingers, and played Ahmad and Garnacho then maybe Garnacho could.
He's not going to do that, though, isn't he? No, he came in and said, look, I'm not changing.
Yeah, no, he's not going to do that. So, for me, it's not looking good for Garnacho. It really isn't. But
and you know what? That point that you make is a very good one. I think it's probably the reason why, more than anything else, we need to stick with Ruben Amorim long term. Because if you go and sell your wide players, because under the likes of Ten Hag and even before that with Ollie, you were talking about 4-3-3 and you were talking about wide wingers, whereas now you're looking at buying narrow 10s. And if you discard Ruben Amorim after 12 months or 18 months and bring in another manager, he's got to play pretty much the exact same way as Ruben Amorim does and not go back to 2 wide players, because then you got to sell your 10s and go and buy fucking new wide players again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it just won't suit, and when you look at, and that's, again, if we were to do that, that's another manager coming in, and it's it's not helpful for the likes of Garnacho and Kobe Menu and, Ahmad and all these guys that are very young, and Harry Amas. It's not good enough for them. They need to buy into a style now that actually suits the way they want to play. Now, Kobe Menu can play in one of those 10s, he can play in one of those 6s or one of those 8s. Ahmed can play in one of those maybe 10 roles, as a narrow winger, or he can play right wing back. Garnacho, I don't see where he fits in. He is an out-and-out winger that plays in a freedom kind of way out wide. So I don't see, if you want me to be honest, I don't see a future for Garnacho at Manchester United. And I hate to say that. I genuinely think there's a player in there, but for him to succeed and for him to fulfill his potential, I think he needs to go somewhere else that actually suits the way he plays.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, Villa are in. What a save. Yeah, I think Garnacho leaving, while I agree with what you're saying there, there's a player there, and I do think, and I if he goes in the summer, I guarantee you he will go somewhere into a team that suits his system, whether it be somewhere like Atletico Madrid or Napoli, and he'll tear it up. He'll absolutely tear it up, but, and we will get it all off the opposition fans, oh, look at Garnacho now, look at McTominay now, look at Anthony now, fine. Garnacho doesn't suit the system. That's why we let him go. And I think if that is the reason why, I think if United weren't as hamstrung by finances, I think we could maybe afford to hang on to him for a couple of seasons and see how he develops and see how quickly he picks up the new system. But I think because we need a quick overhaul and a quick rebuild, and the fact that you're getting pure profit for him, I think that's probably why we'll end up seeing him move on. You know what I mean? But anyway, let's move it on. I want to talk about the frog himself, Thierry Henry. He had some, look, I done a TikTok on it today, and, the one institute left with, proper analysis and level-headed punditry is Monday Night Football, and it's been that way for 30 years. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, so Thierry Henry done a piece on, they were obviously talking about Man United losing to Newcastle, and Henry decided to take a clip, I think it was the third goal, of when Harvey Barnes runs all the way through and he slots it away, and United don't close him down quick enough. But he decides to focus on Leny Yoro looking over at the linesman, and just completely takes any analysis out of the situation and goes in on first of all, a fellow Frenchman, second of all, a 19-year-old kid who's learning his trade, and third of all, probably one of United's best players since Ruben Amorim has come in. Yeah, Adam, go.
Yeah, I didn't actually find this out till this morning, because I like, to be honest, I barely watch Monday Night Football unless it's like maybe a big game,
a good team.
Yeah. And honest to God, I'll be totally honest, I don't. So I didn't actually see that until this morning. But when I saw that, I was like, whoa, that's a bad one from Thierry Henry, who I actually think is a good pundit.
He is a good pundit. Yeah, he's done a lot of very, very good, in-depth analytical pieces on Monday Night Football in the past.
Yeah, and he's actually a coach as well. He's a coach. So
he's Leny Yoro's previous coach.
Well, he might have an agenda against it. I found it very, very weird from Henry that he did that. And like, if you actually look back on the goal, like, and people are he's pointing out Leny Yoro looking at the linesman, but if you actually play the clip 1 second or 2 seconds more, he looks away straight away. He doesn't keep looking at the linesman or hands is up in the air like for an offside or anything like that. It's just a natural instinct. He's looking around. He's not looking at the linesman directly. So, and I found that very lazy analysis, and trying to make, as Carragher then pointed out, a meme out of it, and stuff like that. It was just shocking, and Monday Night Football is about getting analysis and actually watching. Like, people actually watch it from 6:30 onwards, at times, get the analysis and stuff like that, and to actually learn about it. But what they were showing last night with Leny Yoro and stuff like that was nothing short of a disgrace, really.
Yeah, I think it's an easy dig at Manchester United. We know we're shit, and we know that, this season has been absolutely atrocious for us. And, I think it's that whole narrative around United. It's easy clickbait. Let's do a piece on Leny Yoro and, you know, slag him off a little bit rather than actually getting into the nitty gritty as to why Manchester United lost the game or how the goal came about. And it's all about this clickbait, you know, and it's the usual saying about United: hated, adored, never ignored. You know, when United are in the headline, clicks are, you know, things are clicked on more, views go up, you know, ad revenue goes up, so on and so forth. I just thought it was like, when you're talking about, you know, I mean, even with what they've done, I think they took down the Sky Sports News took down the actual tweet off of their official Twitter account, and Jamie Carragher had reposted it as well with laughing faces, and he had to take it down as well. It's just a cheap dig, really, isn't it?
I know it is. It's a cheap dig at Man United because Man United are the biggest club in the Premier League. And, you know, when you talk about Man United, you're going to get traction every single time, whether it's good or bad, you know. So I think it was just, as you said, a cheap dig out at, you know, I was just surprised when he pointed out Leny Yoro. Like, I could understand if you're pointing out Lindelof, or, you know, players like that. I like, Leny Yoro wasn't actually at fault for the goal. And if he actually did a bit of analysis on Leny Yoro for the goal, like, you saw Leny Yoro running in to actually maybe try and close down a tiny bit. But if he did that, then there was an option out wide for Newcastle. So Leny Yoro couldn't really do anything for the goal. But when he then is pointing him out because he's looking at the linesman for a split second, I'm just like, it's just so stupid. I can't really like actually give a thought process on it because I just found it so stupid. Do you know? Especially from like someone like of the stature of Thierry Henry.
And I think that's why it was so shocking, because people were like, well, what the fuck are you doing, lads? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're supposed to be analysing the game. And look, we know about Henry and this and that and the other, you know, and us as Irish people, like we will never, ever forget. You know what I mean? We will never forget that handball. You know, I remember watching it in Quins in Dublin that night. I was in college up there, and the television was pulled off the wall. That's how annoyed people were. Now, you know, it was probably not the friendliest of areas or the friendliest of people in there, but
But I found hilarious though, Jamie Carragher. I'm going to point him out now as well, because if that was Thierry Henry talking about Virgil van Dijk like that, imagine
I said the same thing.
Yeah, imagine what Jamie Carragher would have done. So like, it's madness. It's actually.
It's typical of the mainstream media bias against Manchester United, to be honest with you. And it was really poor. And you know what? They know they fucked up and they got an awful lot of traction over it and so on and so forth. But it was all negative traction towards them. And again, look, I mean, if I was Leny Yoro, and this is, I'd be a stubborn fucker, to be honest with you. If I was Leny Yoro and I was in his position, like, Leny Yoro is going to get interviewed pretty soon, you know, on the back of something like this. And he will get asked about it in his next interview. I would just say, well, I'm never talking to Thierry Henry ever again, you know. And Ben, the good old Brit that's in the chat here, says never a handball. That was photoshopped. Oh, God. Right, look, let's move it on. And let's talk about something a little bit more positive, and that is Bruno Fernandes, because how pivotal he has been for Manchester United this season. I seen a stat today, and I had to bring it into the podcast because we've been speaking about, you know, how important he's been to us in terms of his goals and assists, how he leads the team. And I even seen a tweet earlier on of he was photographed in Manchester today, and he was out walking with ex-Manchester United press officer John Allen, and he took him for lunch. Allen was made redundant by Manchester United last summer. You know, class act, absolute class act, Bruno Fernandes. Love him or hate him, you know, an absolute class act. And the stat today absolutely frightened me to my core. And the Athletic done a report on Bruno Fernandes' goals and how important and where United would be without him. So basically, it's not a set science, because, you know, if Bruno Fernandes didn't get the goals, and someone else might have scored them in certain games and so on and so forth. But they took all the goals that Bruno Fernandes scored in the league that took United from a losing position to a drawing position, or from a drawing position to a winning position. And if you do that with all the goals he scored, he has directly contributed to United gaining 25 points in the league this season. Without them 25 points, Manchester United would currently be sitting on 13 points, and we would be 19th in the league table. I mean, that is fucking frightening. So it is. That is absolutely frightening. Adam, give me your thoughts on that.
Oh my god. I don't know what to say. I mean, it just kind of shows how influential Bruno Fernandes is. You know, he is honestly, like, he is definitely the best signing since Fergie. You know, you look what he's done for Manchester United since he's been here. He has had so many influential seasons. As I said, I think this is his second best season in terms of output for Manchester United. And you look at where we are in the league. So that actually says a lot about Bruno Fernandes this season. 25 points is crazy. It's crazy. Like 20, we have 30, I think we have 38 points in the league.
Yeah.
25 out of 38. That is crazy. Like, you know, from an individual player, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So, like, could you only imagine if he got like an injury that set him out for months? Like, we'd be in a dangerous situation. You know, we'd be on the brink of the championship. Like, so, but again, it just really does show how influential Bruno is. And again, I've actually come to terms with, like, actually how grateful I am to have a player like Bruno in our team. You know, because,
and Roy Keane says it says it as well, you know, good players are always available, and he's always available.
Always available. You know, I think he's had maybe 2 injuries, but he's been out for probably the maximum 2 weeks or 3 weeks with those injuries.
I think he's only ever missed 2 games for Man United.
There you go. Do you know, like, it's crazy, like, how he's fit every single game. But that's an amazing attribute to have as well. You know, to be available every single game. You know, and what I'll say about Bruno is he is fit every game, and he does put his heart on the line for Manchester United, and he puts in a shift every single game. You know, like, I've been hearing people actually, like, at times that he doesn't track back. Bruno Fernandes is one of our most hardest working players at the football club. You know, do I still think he's a captain? It is debatable. You know, people might agree, people might disagree. I don't think he's a Manchester United captain, but I do think he's one of our most important players, probably our most important player.
Yeah, I think that the attributes of a captain have changed an awful lot over the last few years as well. You know what I mean? Like the days of a Roy Keane or a Patrick Vieira or a John Terry, you know, I mean, can you name me, right, who's Nottingham Forest's captain?
Morgan Gibbs-White.
Fuck, I was hoping you wouldn't know. But my point being is, captains don't, and maybe it's just me then, but captains don't stand out that often anymore, if you get me. You know, I couldn't tell you who the Brighton captain is. I couldn't tell you who I only know who the Aston Villa captain is because I just seen him walking off the pitch at McGinn a couple of minutes ago. You know, there's not them real big characters where you go, you know, who was the captain for Arsenal in 99? It was Tony Adams. Of course it was fucking Tony Adams, you know, like that kind of way. So do you think that's a little bit maybe where the criticism falls for Bruno Fernandes? I mean, if you're talking about leading by example, maybe on the pitch, I don't think it gets much better. But would that be fair?
Yeah. No, like, I think there's a slight agenda against Bruno because of the way he does act on the pitch as a captain. You know, like, I go back to certain results that happened. You know, if you go back, and I hate to bring it back to this, but if you look at the 7-0 loss to Liverpool and stuff like that, and 6-3 Man City and all these kind of results where he was the captain in those games, and you saw what he was doing in those games, just kicking out of players and, you know, not really running back and stuff like that. Like, that is where I think people bring it back to, okay, maybe he's not a captain. But if you look at his performances this season, there has been captain performances there from Bruno quite a lot, and he has improved as a captain. But I just think to take us to a title, which again is not going to be for a long time, you know, I just don't think he's the guy to do it as a captain. But he is improving in terms of his leadership skills and stuff like that, and what he's doing actually off the pitch as well. You know, he's an amazing for Bruno. So to have a player like that and to have a character like that is an amazing thing. So long may it continue, and hopefully he stays for the next couple of years.
I would like to see him. I'm going to go against you slightly here. I would like to see him be the one to lift the Premier League trophy for us. And the only reason I would is because you've got to say one thing about him, and nobody can go against him on this. He has given, he would get into any team in the world, right, on his ability alone. And he has decided to stay at Manchester United. You know, the shit show that is Manchester United over the last well, however long he's been here 5 years, over 5 years now. You know, you've got to give him credit where he could have gone anywhere. You know, now look, Man United probably nipped in at the right time when he was on the come up, but I think it was quite clear after maybe 2 seasons at United that, right, this guy can fucking play anywhere. And the fact that he signed a new contract when United have been getting worse and worse, and that he stuck by us, you know, I go to bed tonight now and just go, Bruno lifting the Premier League. You know what I mean? I don't think anyone would give a fuck about Bruno lifting the Premier, as long as we're lifting the bloody thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to bring that in, and you know, it was a frightening stat. Not only, you know, in terms of how good Bruno Fernandes is, but in terms of how fucking shit the rest of them have been. You know what I mean?
25 points out of 38 because of an individual player is absolutely, like, it really does show you how bad we are. Not how bad, like, in terms of, like, you know, Bruno and stuff like that. It shows you how unbelievable Bruno is, but it shows you how bad Manchester United are. It's crazy. It really is.
Absolutely. Right, Adam, let's talk about Thursday night. Lyon at home. I'd love to be going to it. I've got tickets. Well, I had tickets. I obviously saw them because I've got my cup season tickets there. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a big. It's the biggest game of the season. Absolutely, it is. And I heard as well, United have I can't remember the name of it. Do you know the yucks like on FIFA where the players drop down off of the top of the stand?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of it actually is, but for the first time ever, United have one of them for Old Trafford. I don't know what it is. I just read something about it today. So yeah, United are going all out. You know, I think back to, you know, the 2008 semi-final when Scholes scored. I'm afraid to ask you what your age was for that game, because
5.
Why 5? Oh, Jesus Christ! But I remember the flags. I remember the mascots with the flags on the end line, and it was the first time we ever really seen that at Old Trafford. And they had the kind of ticker tape in the stands where people were saying "believe" and stuff like that, and it worked. You know, I'm buzzing for tomorrow or for Thursday's game. But it's a huge game. And look, if we don't get through, it's season over, we know. But what are your thoughts going into it? Do you think United will get through, or are you positive?
I'm hopeful. You know, I was confident last week, and I don't know why I was confident last week. I think going away to Lyon is tougher at Old Trafford, but I think I'm just more hopeful and praying for this one. Look, it's a European night at Old Trafford. We know how good European nights at Old Trafford can be, and we've seen it over the years. You know, you mentioned obviously the Paul Scholes one there. You know, we've previous Champions League games as well. But the reality is, you know, this is a make or break. You know, this is a make or break game for this squad. You know, it's not make or break for Ruben Amorim, obviously, but it's a make or break for this squad. You know, do they have the balls? Do they have the cojones to actually go out there and perform and put in an unbelievable performance? Because this is the biggest game of the season, you know, and these fans are expecting a performance to be put in, you know. And look, we have injuries and stuff like that, but the reality is this Manchester United squad should be good enough to beat this Lyon team. I'm sorry. No, we're in a bad position in the league. I completely understand that. But this Manchester United squad should be good enough to go out there and beat Lyon at Old Trafford on a European night. It's not fucking good enough if we go out to this Lyon side. So this is a big chance for this squad to get into a semi-final of European competition. Yes, it's not the Champions League, but it is the Europa League. And it's a getaway to get back into the Champions League. So the reality is, put in a performance, you know, put some heart and desire in, you know, and show passion and fucking quality on the night. Because us fans deserve it. We fucking deserve it. Yeah? So put in a performance, put in a shift, and show some fucking balls. And go out there and put in a performance for those fans. 4-0. Come on.
Come on. Lovely. Lovely.
2-1.
2-1. Right, okay. I want to ask you before we go about obviously Xerxes being out, you know, and being injured for this game. And it's terribly disappointing for him because he's been hitting a bit of a purple patch, in fairness to him. In relation to the number 9, obviously, look, Rasmus Højlund is, you know, really, really struggling. I don't want to go too heavy in on him because he's having a really difficult time. Do you go with Rasmus Højlund for this game in the number 9? There's been some talk of potentially maybe playing Bruno in a false 9. He's played there before under Ruben Amorim. with maybe Garnacho or Manu playing behind him. What would you like to see for the number 9 on Thursday night?
There's things we can try out. Obviously, I think Hoyland will start, in my opinion. I think that will happen. But I think Bruno on the false 9 wouldn't be a bad option. I think Bruno on the false 9, Garnacho, and maybe a Mason Mount, maybe in those number 10.
High intensity pressing.
High intensity pressing, exactly. To press and, create pressure. So I think maybe we could do that. And I think I've been seeing people putting Garnacho up front. I mean, I think that would be crazy. I don't think he should be playing number 9 at all. But I think Bruno or Hoylands in that 9 role, I don't think it'd actually be that bad. I think Bruno in the false 9 role could actually work. But
it's a completely different way of playing, isn't it? Depending on which one. I recorded my match preview today. It'll be up at lunchtime tomorrow on YouTube. But I was saying, if you did start maybe Bruno Fernandes in the false 9 and hopefully go a goal or two up, then with 20 minutes to go, you can bring on someone like Rasmus Højlund just to run in off the last man and stretch the game a little bit and take the pressure off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you have narrow 10s, I think if we were playing 4-3-3 and we had wingers, and maybe you could play Bruno as a false 9, because then you'd have him dropping in to receive it. You'd have wingers running in behind. But I think with this system, it's a bit different because it's 2 number 10s, so, but we can still do it, and, to have Mount, Bruno and Garnacho, who are good at pressing. Garnacho can improve a bit, but there's high intensity there in terms of Bruno and Mount. So, and maybe Kobe Manu could play in the 10. So, look, to be honest, whatever we go with, I'm happy with. I just want to see a good performance from this Manchester United team. Who plays there? They need to put in a shift. They need to put in a proper performance because, as I said, it's make or break. So, but again, I think he'll go with Højlund, but I would try out Bruno as a false 9. Just see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens. Yeah, and look. Again, I don't think cup competitions are completely different. Obviously, all that matters is we're in the semi-final. However we do it, you would like to see us do it with a good performance and a 3-0 win. Brilliant, happy days. But just get to that semi-final and see where we can take it. But Adam, look, I'm sure we'll talk about it. And hopefully this time next week, when we're on again, we'll be in a Europa League semi-final because I'll have tickets to it and. Fuck, I want to be in the semi-final in Old Trafford. But Adam, look, as always, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And guys, go follow Adam. His channel is linked down below. Tomaldinho over on TikTok. You need to get YouTube started as well, by the way. You need to, yeah. Maybe I need to start charging you mentorship or something like that. But anyway, Adam, thanks for coming on as always. And thanks to everybody for tuning in, guys. Please do smash a like on the video. Subscribe if you're new, if you're watching live on YouTube. If you are listening back on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit the follow button. Give us a 5-star review. Come on, United. Let's go Thursday night. Hope we're back here next week with a win and into the semi-final. Thanks for listening, guys. And I'll chat to you next week. Take it easy.